Well, this morning we're going to be talking about the need for connection. And if you have a Bible and you want to go ahead and get a head start, you can turn over to 1 Thessalonians 2. If you don't have a Bible and you'd like one, raise your hand, and we've got some in the back that we can let you use. Anybody that needs one. And this is a message that is kind of a foundational piece of the ministry and the church. And if you're visiting for the first time, this is a great Sunday for you to be here, because you're going to hear a lot about our vision and the way we approach things. But how many of you have ever been in an elevator? A few of you, okay. And elevators can be one of those awkward places, especially jam-packed elevators. Anybody ever been in a jam-packed elevator with a bunch of people? Yeah. You're sitting there and you don't really know the people, and you're trying not to touch, and you're not really saying anything, and everybody's nobody's looking really at each other. Everybody's looking up at the lights going across. And so, it can be really awkward for the people in there. But have you ever noticed when the doors open and there's two people, and they're just chatting and carrying on a conversation, and you're like, oh, they're going to get in here and kind of break the ice. And as soon as they walk through the doors, it's dead quiet. They climb in, and they get in and they pack into the elevator. And it's kind of one of those just weird things that everybody has experienced from time to time. And back whenever I lived in Nashville, I was downtown one night with a buddy of mine, and we were in a really, really nice building that housed some record labels and some industry lawyers and just all kinds of high-end people. And we were down there, we were waiting on the elevator. And so we were trying to get downstairs, and the elevator dings and the doors open, and it is jam-packed. And so obviously my first thought was, we'll wait for the next one, but my buddy was like, no, we're getting in now, come on, and I'm like, seriously? Because he wasn't a small guy. He was a really big guy, and he did some security and some different things. And so he was one of those people that had never met a stranger. Anybody ever seen one of those people when they walk in, they've never met a stranger, kind of like Tim, he walks in and everybody knows who he is. And so he was kind of like that. So I'm thinking, there's no way we're going to fit. There were people all the way up to the front as the doors open. He's like, we can fit in here. So he grabs me. I'm thinking, no, we're not getting in. He shoves me in there. So I'm in the middle of all these people. And I turn around. Well, he gets in, and he's taller than everybody. And he gets in, and it's so packed that he can't even turn around. So he's facing everybody, and I'm like, this is going to be awkward. And the doors close behind him. He's got this real serious look on his face. He's a real big guy. And he goes, so I bet you're all wondering why we called this meeting this evening. And everybody started laughing, and it broke the awkward silence. And so everybody started talking and interacting, and they were laughing, and he was laughing. And that was all that they needed. They just needed somebody to break the ice. And so today we're going to be talking about the topic of relationships. And we're going to be talking about, if you've been around here and you've heard me say love God, love people, love life, when you think and look at all of those, each one of those require a relationship. To love God, you're entering into relationship with God, and you're experiencing all that He has for you. Love people. You need to be in relationship with people in order to love people. And then to love life, that usually requires relationships, connections with other people. And so today we're going to be talking about the need for connections. And in many ways, the elevator is an example of the world today. A large impersonal institution where anonymity, it took me a second, I always get hung up on that word, isolation and independence are the norm. It shows us that people can be surrounded in a crowd and not experience community. We can be a part of a company, a club, a church, and not feel like we belong or we are accepted. We can share an office and even a home and not have significant relationships. And today, it's really getting rampant with technology and social media, and I'm not up here bad-mouthing any of that. I'm just saying that we kind of become disconnected and we're not really engaged in deep, meaningful relationships. And even in churches and in businesses and things, you're a part of something, but a lot of times you just feel like a number. I mean, back when the example I was thinking of this week is when we would shop at Safeway. You had a Safeway card, and you'd swipe it, and you got a little discount, and you got some money off your gas, and you were a part of, the members club of Safeway, but it really didn't have a whole lot. And there's a lot of people who are members of clubs and churches, and they go in and they're there, but they're never really feeling connected. They're never experiencing true, healthy, deep, meaningful relationships. And one great example of a person in the Bible who developed great relationships was Paul. Now, he traveled all across, all over, from city to city, and wherever he went, he established a group of people who huddled together in a supportive and encouraging community. How many of you like the sound of a supportive, encouraging community? Anybody? Yeah. And so, Paul was able to create significant relationships, and that's what we're going to look at today. But if we look at Thessalonians, where I ask you to turn over, we see some of the key components of establishing and maintaining community. And the main scriptures that we're going to be looking at today are 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 7, and verse 8 is where we're going to kind of spend most of our time. The first thing that we need to realize is you need to concede your need for others. And if you look at 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 7 says, "Instead, we were like young children among you, just as a nursing mother cares for her children." Paul identified the need to belong in this verse, as well as in another verse, in 1 Corinthians 12, verse 20 through 22, it says, "As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, 'I don't need you,' and the head cannot say to the feet, 'I don't need you.' On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable." And the need for fellowship and connection with others is rooted deep in our heart. God planned that we be in deep, meaningful relationships. And this is also one of the reasons he said in Genesis 2:18, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not the only reason, but that is one of the reasons. And we even see in Acts 2:42 that the early church devoted itself to fellowship. Fellowship was a very important part of their meeting together. They understood the importance of community. And even when we look at Jesus, you look at the life of Jesus, he lived in constant fellowship and community and connection with the 12 disciples. And one of the things that our culture has caused us to do is we've gotten, I call it the fast food type mentality of where we get in, we get out. And unfortunately, we're all guilty of it, including myself, where we pop in, we get what we need, what we're supposed to do, and then we're out, and we're able to not really have to worry about connecting with anyone. We're too busy with our own life, and we're doing all these things. And so part of this message, and the reason I titled it The Need for Connections, or the need, what did I title this? The Need for Connection. Thank you, I appreciate that. Was this fall, as we've been talking about, we're going to be kicking off our Connect groups. And this is a key fundamental thing that we really need to understand the importance of why we're doing this and what it's all about. Secondly, we need to cultivate deep relationships. We should not take a relationship lightly. In order to make it through dark times and in a cold, disconnected world, we need meaningful relationships. Relationships like these don't just happen. They require effort And we have to do more than just reach out to others. We have to share our lives with others as well. And this truth is one of Paul's keys to establishing supportive relationships. Thank you. If you look in 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 8, it says, "So we cared for you because we loved you so much. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well." When you look at Paul, you see a person that when he would write to a church, he would call by name 2 or 3 or even more people when he would write in his letters. And they were very close to him, and he had developed significant relationships with each of these people. In these verses, you find 3 words that form the basis for developing relationships which pass the test of time. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about developing, cultivating deep relationships. And it's one of those things that no matter where you're coming from, you know, the popular thing over the last few years is talking about introverts, extroverts. So many of you have heard those terms and all these things. And I've even used them up here. But even with an introvert who doesn't really necessarily like to be in big crowds of people, they still need deep, meaningful relationships. Because people who find themselves disconnected and not in deep, meaningful relationships usually aren't doing very well mentally or emotionally. And in fact, this week, Jenny came across an article that was talking about addiction. And one of the things that over studies, over the years that they've realized, is that most people were lacking in deep, meaningful relationships and connecting with something purposeful. And that's why you hear, and even today as we were praying over the kids, people need to realize, and they want to be involved in something that makes a difference. They want to be needed. They want to be feeling like they're doing something important. And so when we as individuals realize that God created each one of us with a purpose, with a plan, and let me go ahead and say this before we move on. As we were talking about in those scriptures, you know, it talked about the body and all the different parts of the body work together. So many times we get focused on, especially in church, we get focused on who's up front, who's talking, who's doing those things, and we think that those people are super special, and you know that's what everybody wants to do. And what everybody needs to start realizing as a whole is that I couldn't do what I'm doing today without all of you. And see, this is where we start talking about team, and I use this term a lot with our band, but everybody gets so focused on, oh, I'd like to be up front talking, or I'd like to stand up and preach. The person who is greeting, the person who is cleaning the toilets is just as important as the person getting up and delivering the message, because we all need each other. And so when we can get out of this thing of the spotlight and chasing all these things that make us feel important, realize that we all have unique gifts and talents that God has given us in order for us to use in our body, in our community, to develop deep relationships and to connect with each other, then we're all going to find ourselves loving God, loving people, and loving life. So in these verses that we've just read, we find 3 words that form the basis for developing relationship. First, there is care. It says, as a nursing mother cares for her children, in verse 7. Remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's one of those things that I think all of us, have been guilty of at times. Of we know something and we want to give our 2 cents to a situation, and so we start trying to talk to somebody, or maybe even counsel somebody, or give somebody advice. But if that person doesn't truly understand that you care about them and that you love them, they're not going to be necessarily real open to you. Because when you know somebody cares about you and they're looking out for your best interests, when they go, hey, I want to help you with something, they'll go, okay, yeah, help me, because they know how much you care. The second thing is share. In verse 8 it says, we were delighted to share with you our lives as well. And when you look at the term sharing our lives, it continues with the mothering idea. A mother cannot nurse her child without sharing a part of herself. For us to be in a deep relationship with others requires that we get up close and personal with others. True, healthy relationship is not done from a distance. It requires us to be close, knowing the inner workings of things and what makes a person tick. And part of the reason that a lot of people, Christians, believers, are not entering into deep relationship with each other in their body is because I'll use that royal we. Is that okay with everybody? That we covers all Christians, every creed, denomination, just so everybody knows. I'm not picking on anybody, but we as believers and Christians have gotten very judgmental and condescending. And it's one of those things because usually those people go, well, I'm supposed to point out your sins and help you, And you can do that in love. You can go to somebody and say, hey, I really feel like you're going off the rails here. I feel like you're missing it. But the only way somebody's going to listen to you is if they're close to you. If you've developed a deep relationship with them. And then you're able to go, hey, man, I've noticed, this is going on in your life, and I feel like it's really a negative, bad thing. But what a lot of the church people have done is they don't know, Bob from over there, and they walk over to him, and they're like, man, you got sin in your life, and and they start running down the list, and the guy's like, who are you? And in order for us to be able to get into a deep relationship with each other and share, we've got to lay the judgment and the pointing everybody's flaws out. Because I realize that we're supposed to help each other and build each other up, and that's a great thing. But a lot of people have decided that they are God on earth and that they can say what's wrong and what's right, and they're passing judgment. And so that turns a lot of people off. And people have left church hurt and, just like I'm never stepping foot in church again because of people. Because they allowed themselves to get in deep relationships and then got burnt and got hurt. And so one of the things that I want us as a body to understand is that when we get close and we develop deep, meaningful relationships and we begin to share with each other and even people outside of this body, is that we're not coming from a place of judgment. We're not coming from a place of condemnation. We will, when we get close and we develop a relationship with people, that's when you'll be able to go, hey, have you thought about this? And have you, do you think this in your life could be causing you some problems? Do you think this way of thinking could be causing you some problems? And then those people are going to be open. And then we're able to share. Thirdly, it's dear. Because we loved you so much, out of verse 8. Paul loved these people. When we love someone, we do not treat them as unimportant or means to an end, but as an individual who has value. We as a body, as a whole, need to understand that love needs to be the first thing that we use when reaching out to people. Because love will break down barriers. Love will break down walls. Because when you realize how God reacts to you and how God reaches out to you, it's from love. I know a lot of people think, boy, God really got my attention when, I broke my back and I was laid up in a hospital bed it wasn't God that did that to you. Now, you may have turned to God during that time, but God is a loving, merciful, caring God. And He will use things that the enemy meant for evil to turn them around to draw you close to Him. But when God pursues us, He pursues us with love. He says, come to me. Let me show you all the things that I have for you. Let me show you all the things that when I sent my Son to die on the cross that were made available for you. That sounds like love. That doesn't sound like somebody that is angry or trying to run you down and tackle you. I mean, if he wanted to do that, he could. It would be really easy to knock you flat on your back. But he pursues you with love. And that's what we need to, as a body, as Christians, need to realize, that when we're reaching out and we're developing relationships, that we need to do so in love. And one of those things is learning the gestures of love. A hug, a handshake, roughhousing, and acts of kindness. Love is something that you do, not just something that you say. And thankfully, it seems like lately, over the last few years, that people have become more aware of, we used to be really bad about throwing the term love around, to people. And you'd be like, yeah, I love you, But there was never any action behind it. And so the word itself became kind of empty and hollow. And you would say, yeah, I love you. And, the best example could be is if you're in a relationship with your wife or with your husband, and you always say, I love you, but you never do anything. You never go on a date. You never hug. You never kiss. You spend time with each other. And it just as you're passing, you're like, I love you. That's kind of hollow, don't you think? I mean, you're somebody in that relationship ain't going to be happy. Because it's one of those things that love is a verb. And there's actually a song that I love that it's called Love is a Verb. No, everybody's laughing. This one is Love is a Verb. John Mayer actually came out with this a few years ago. And one of the lines says, when you show me love, I don't need your words. Yeah, love ain't a thing. Love is a verb. And I know there's been lots of songs, over the years, but when we really when you think about God, and that when you really enter into a deep, meaningful relationship with Him, you're going to start seeing things in your life and experiencing things in your life where your Heavenly Father is showing you His love. Because that's what He wants to do. And so what that does is that causes you to fall deeper and deeper in love with Him and to trust Him and to open up to Him. And so when we, as believers, go out to the world or even in the church setting itself, and we begin to show people love and the love of Jesus Christ, then it makes a difference. When we don't just go out and say, yeah, Jesus loves you. You're like, yeah, right. But when you go out and you go, let me pay for those groceries. Or let me sit down and listen to you pour out your baggage and your junk on me for 2 hours because I care. That's showing love. That's showing that we care for people. And then thirdly, we need to commit to authenticity. If we are ever going to develop deep and meaningful relationships, we have to go deeper than just surface conversations. We have to be real and authentic with each other. Authenticity happens when the masks come off, the conversations get deep, hearts get vulnerable, lives are shared, and tenderness and grace are shown. And this is when the body of Christ becomes brothers and sisters. This is where we lay down the need to be right, the pride and the arrogance and the feeling of needing to judge, and we encourage and help each other to be all that God has created us to be and to do all that God's created us to do. Community is one of the things that is at the heart of this ministry and at this church. And I realize over these last 6 months, going on 7, that there's been a lot of focus put on Sundays. And that's because we're trying to lay a solid foundation. But that's just this much of the vision. Because the vision of this ministry, like you've heard me say time and time again, is we're getting outside the 4 walls of the church. And we know that true relationships are built when you're sitting across having dinner with somebody. Or you're at somebody's house and you're playing games and just visiting and fellowshipping. And it's really hard on Sunday morning to develop deep, meaningful relationships because you come in and then when the long-winded preacher's finally done preaching, you're hustling out because you want to get lunch and football season's starting, so got to get home, catch that first game, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, Sunday mornings, because we believe that God is calling us as believers, as Christians, to enter into deeper relationships with each other and to connect, because that's what the early church did. When somebody in the body would fall on hard times, they knew that they had a community surrounding them that would say, we're here to help you. And when we as believers start joining together and we build a community, we get into deep, meaningful relationships, then when you pick up the phone, you can call somebody and go, I just got some bad news, and I need you to pray for me. And you know that you've got somebody. And that as we spend time together and we're fellowshipping, and don't make this super religious, people, because it's not. It's about relationship. Because our small groups, yeah, we're gonna dive into some word and we're gonna do some things. But the most important thing is that we're developing relationships with each other. And as we develop those relationships, we're gonna dive into the word together. We're gonna experience the love of God. And as we go out, the love of God's gonna be working through us. And the people around us are gonna see and experience the love of God. And we're gonna be discovering our purpose, our plan. And so it goes right back to love God, love people, love life. A community is becoming absorbed and involved in the lives of others as active participants, relating to, sharing with, and caring for others. This is what Paul was saying in verse 8. He opened his life to the people. He wasn't standoffish. He didn't keep a healthy distance. He opened his life to them. For far too long, we've isolated ourselves, and there's so many people sitting in churches today that are hurting, that feel disconnected, that want somebody to come up and say, hey, how are you doing? And I will brag on you guys right out of the gate, because I've had different people, and my dad included, when they came out here, they said, man, your church is like a family. Everybody visits, everybody talks, and it's just a real warm and welcoming environment. And so that goes to show that we're already laying a foundation of family, of community, of the importance of connecting with each other. And I can tell you firsthand that as we move forward and as we grow, that will always be at the front of everything that we do, is understanding that we are a family. And just like natural families grow and get bigger, and you still get together and you still go see people and all that, we will always have family, community, and connecting with each other and having deep, meaningful relationships in this ministry and in this church. And if it's something that you don't want, then, we're not going to force anything on you. But that's our vision, because we know that when you have people surrounding you that can pray for you, that can support you, that can help you, then you're more likely to succeed. You're more likely to be who God's created you to be. You're more likely to stay on the course that God's called you to be on and reach your full potential. How many of you want to reach your full potential? Yeah. And so we want to see you reach that full potential. And that's what developing deep, meaningful relationships is about. And so this morning I'm going to have the band come up as I'm closing, and it does mean something this morning. So first of all, it's important that we as a church body understand the importance and need for connection and relationship with each other. And I would encourage you on Sundays for now, till we get our Connect group started, show up a little early. Have some coffee, have some donuts or cookie, and visit with some people, which a lot of you already do. And then if we can get the preacher to not preach so long, maybe stick around afterwards. Amen. Amen. And visit with some people afterwards. And because you may not realize, but that's when a lot of ministry actually takes place, is before and after services. You know, people come up and I need prayer. What do you think about this situation? So I encourage all of you to, if you want to develop deep and meaningful relationships with people, and you want to feel connected and involved in a ministry and in a body of believers, this will be the place for you, because we love it, and we want to get you involved, and we want to connect with you. And if you don't, then you'll be able to slip in and out, however you want to do it. But I would encourage you to come early, stay a little bit late, connect with people around you. Because when we begin to experience this community, this deep relationship with each other, we'll be able to reach the people that we come in contact with every day. And like I've said, time and time again, it's really simple, but it's kind of complex, is love God, love people, love life. If we're going to be able to reach a hurting world, then we need to be able to develop deep, meaningful relationships with people, no matter what background they're coming from, no matter what they've been through, what kind of baggage they bring with them. We're going to open our arms just as God does when we come to Him with our mess and all of our junk. We're like, I'm sorry, God. And He's like, get in here and give you a hug. I love you. That's what we as a body of believers needs to do, no matter where you're coming from.